Joining us now, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson from his home state of Louisiana. Speaker, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. I know you're going to be part of a vigil tonight that is about Charlie's life, but more broadly about bringing this country back together. How do we do that?
We do that by carrying on his legacy. This has been a very difficult week in America, to say the least, Shannon. People are very saddened. They're very angry. Many people are afraid. It cast a shadow across the country and certainly on Capitol Hill. But as Erica said so well, so clearly, our friend Charlie would not want us to be consumed by despair. He would want us to carry his message forward, and that's exactly what is going to happen.
So a lot of grief, obviously, today, but fear as well, frankly. Here's what one of your colleagues, House Oversight Chair James Comer, here's what he said a couple of days ago. He says both parties have some guilt, so hopefully we can take a tragedy like this and try all to do better. And I think we can all do better, myself included. Do you get the sense there is some real soul searching on both sides of the aisle about how we got here?
I think there is. I've spoken to a lot of members on both sides of the aisle, and there's this recognition that, people have got to stop framing simple policy disagreements in terms of existential threats to our democracy and all these phrases you hear all the time. You can't call the other side fascists and enemies of the state and not understand that there are some deranged people in our society who will take that as cues to act and do crazy and dangerous things. And that's what we've seen in increasing frequency. So members of Congress and all public officials have an obligation to speak clearly into this and calm the waters. We can have vigorous disputes. I mean, Charlie Kirk was an expert at that. He loved debate. But Charlie also advanced another really important idea, and that is that he loved the people on the other side of that table. He was never motivated by hate. He was motivated by truth and love. And that's what we have to do. That's who we are as Americans. That is follows the best of our Judeo-Christian traditions and heritage and our civil society, and we have got to get back to that.
Speaker Johnson destroys Ilhan Omar after her disturbing remarks on Charlie Kirk, and the fallout will leave you stunned. The clash isn't just another headline, it's a moment that exposes the raw tension tearing through Washington right now. What Johnson said cut through the noise with a force Omar never saw coming. And it's setting the stage for a fight that could reshape the political battlefield. Stay locked in, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications because you won't want to miss the truth that others are too afraid to say out loud. Johnson's fiery pushback. Speaker Mike Johnson's response to Ilhan Omar's disturbing remarks was unlike anything we've seen from him before. Known for his calm and measured tone, he shocked observers when he delivered a cutting rebuke that left no doubt about where he stands. His words were sharp, unapologetic, and carried the weight of someone who has watched political rhetoric spiral out of control. Johnson drew a line in the sand, refusing to let Omar's dismissal of Charlie Kirk's legacy go unchecked. What stunned even his allies was the passion in his tone, almost as if the dam had broken after years of restraint. He wasn't just defending Kirk, he was defending a principle bigger than one man. Johnson's voice carried the frustration of millions who feel their values are constantly mocked and misrepresented. And for once, Washington couldn't ignore the force of his conviction. But what makes this moment even more remarkable is not just Johnson's anger, it's the rare glimpse into what's really happening behind closed doors in Washington. The dangerous cost of rhetoric. What Johnson warned about goes far beyond political theater. Data from the United States Capitol Police shows threats against members of Congress have more than doubled since 2017, crossing 9,600 reported incidents in a single year. This isn't just about words, it's about the dangerous climate words create. When Omar branded Kirk's memory as false or exaggerated, Johnson argued that comments like hers fuel an environment where political violence can thrive. The shocking truth is that lawmakers are now receiving threats not just at the Capitol, but in their homes, at their children's schools, even while shopping with their families. These aren't empty warnings. Arrests have already been made in multiple states for violent plots tied to political anger. And still, the rhetoric keeps rising higher and higher. Ordinary Americans may shrug at sharp insults in Washington, but the statistics reveal a chilling reality. Unchecked rhetoric has real-world consequences. And here's the twist, Johnson didn't stop at calling out Omar. He pointed straight at the larger system feeding this fire.
Charlie and how he was in engaging with people, and yet there are a lot of folks out there who say that's the opposite of his legacy. They're portraying him as a hateful, bigoted person. I want to play something from Congresswoman Ilhan Omar speaking about him and what he was really like and what his purpose was this week.
There are a lot of people who are out there talking about him just wanting to have a civil debate.
A complete rewriting of history.
These people are full of shit, and it's important for us to call them out while we feel anger and sadness and have, empathy.
And she was referring more broadly to a lot of people on the right that she says have now resulted in her having death threats and the need for around-the-clock security, which I know you've talked about. That's not something you can do for every member. It would cost billions of dollars. But what do you make of her characterization that he really wasn't about civil debate?
She clearly has no idea what she's talking about. She has not followed Charlie. She's playing into this characterization of him that the left has been advancing. There are people actually celebrating his murder online, and that tells you everything you need to know about that side. We've got to get cut through that. Look, member security is a serious matter. We're looking into all options to increase security measures so that they have plenty of coverage for their residential security and their personal security as well. And I think we'll be able to handle that. But there is this angst out there, and we've got to turn the rhetoric down. That is exactly the opposite of what we should be doing, what you just saw in that video right there. And I hope all members of Congress will join us. Look, we've been very active in trying to carry on and really, I think, portray clearly what Charlie was about. And his record speaks for itself. He was a Christian, a committed believer. He understood what Scripture teaches, what you and I understand, Shannon, that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and spiritual darkness. And Charlie understood. He put on, as it says there in Ephesians 6, the full armor of God to go out and advance truth and do it in love. And that's exactly what he did. That's what his legacy stands for. And everyone around this country who is mourning his death understands that, in spite of what some of these voices are saying.
Now it's media amplification exposed. Johnson argued that political leaders aren't the only ones responsible. The media's endless repetition of loaded labels magnifies the danger. A Pew Research study found that nearly 63% of Americans believe media outlets exaggerate political conflict for attention, and Johnson's warning echoed that concern. He pointed to the pattern. Repeat a narrative long enough, and someone unstable may treat it as a call to action. This is where the story gets even darker. Fringe voices celebrating political violence online are amplified by algorithms that feed chaos for clicks. Johnson's rebuke wasn't only about politicians, it was a shot across the bow at media corporations profiting from division. He exposed the uncomfortable truth that outrage has become a business model. This wasn't just a jab at Omar, it was a direct attack on the echo chambers that shape public opinion. And here's where things get even more shocking. While critics dismissed his concerns, Johnson revealed how public anger is already reshaping America's political landscape. The surge of grassroots movements. In the wake of Kirk's assassination, Turning Point USA reported more than 32,000 new student chapter requests, a surge unprecedented in its history. These aren't just numbers. They represent young Americans stepping into the political arena at a time of national grief. Johnson cited these statistics to argue that the tragedy is sparking a generational awakening, with college students leading the charge. Far from silencing voices, the moment has created an unstoppable wave of activism, and the ripple effect is undeniable. Candlelight vigils on campuses, spontaneous rallies drawing thousands, and young voters lining up to register in record numbers. What's shocking is how this momentum is spilling into unexpected places. Even in traditionally liberal strongholds, conservative student groups are multiplying. The mainstream media barely mentions it, but the numbers are impossible to ignore. The same data shows voter registration among 18 to 24-year-olds is climbing in key battleground states, a detail often buried in mainstream coverage. But this awakening also raises a question that Johnson himself addressed. Can America handle this new wave of outspoken voices without collapsing into chaos?
There's this concern now that speech will go underground, that there'll be less of an interchange on college campuses and other places, and that people recede to these dark corners of apps and internets and communication channels. So what about that? I mean, I know your background as a constitutional law expert and attorney. I mean, how do we balance issues of free speech, of, you know, privacy concerns in trying to get ahead of these things before they happen?
Well, you're right. I mean, for 20 years before I got elected to Congress, I was a religious liberty and free speech defense attorney. We understood we've got to advance and defend and protect the free marketplace of ideas, because vigorous debate is what made our country so great. But the key is to remember that you can disagree with someone vehemently on policy and not hate them as a person. And that's what Charlie was all about. Remember, at the end of his most vigorous debates, he was the very first person to reach out a hand of friendship, to put his arm, offer his arm around the shoulder of someone who disagreed with him vehemently, because he understood it was about the person, it's about the people, it's about the heart. And we've got to get back to that. We cannot shrink back from advancing that truth and advancing our ideas in the public square. We should double down. And I'm so encouraged by what Erica said, his dear widow, that she's going to go out and advance that herself. And that example is going to be very important for a lot of young people. I spoke at a vigil here at LSU in Baton Rouge Friday night. For many students, over 1,000 students filled the arena. It was standing room only, and they're encouraged to go forward. We're seeing that around the country. I'll be speaking at the memorial service tonight in Washington, D.C., at the Kennedy Center on Charlie's behalf, and you're gonna hear everyone saying that. Don't shrink back. Go forward. Now is the time to advance truth, and I think it could be a true turning point for the country it's so aptly named.
Free speech under siege. Johnson, a constitutional attorney before becoming speaker, made it clear: free speech must survive even in turbulent times. But here's the conflict. A Knight Foundation survey showed that nearly 60% of college students believe shouting down controversial speakers is acceptable in some cases. That statistic paints a stark picture of where America could be headed. Johnson insisted that Kirk's real legacy was his ability to debate fiercely, yet respect people on the other side. Something he fears is disappearing from campuses. This isn't a small cultural shift, it's a generational crisis. Students are being taught that silencing voices they dislike is a form of justice, when in reality it's the death of dialogue. The shock comes when even professors now admit they avoid discussing politics out of fear of being targeted. America's core value, the ability to argue passionately without hating the person across from you, is crumbling. His warning wasn't abstract, it was backed by years of legal battles defending speech rights. And just when you think this debate is only about campuses, Johnson pointed to a bigger storm brewing inside Congress itself. They're a test for Washington's future. The clash with Omar was not just personal, it symbolized the fragile state of Congress itself. Internal data from watchdog groups shows congressional approval ratings hovering near record lows under 20%. Johnson's call for restraint wasn't a plea for civility alone, but a test of whether lawmakers can restore any credibility with the American people. If even in tragedy leaders like Omar and Johnson can't agree on the basics of respect, then America risks sliding further into division. And the warning signs are everywhere. Bipartisan cooperation has nearly collapsed. Key legislation is stalled for months, and polls show growing numbers of Americans believe their government no longer represents them. Johnson's clash with Omar wasn't just a soundbite. It was a spotlight on a Congress teetering on the edge of dysfunction. The shocking reality is this: if leaders can't pull back now, the spiral of division may become irreversible. Johnson's attack carried a warning. Either lawmakers control their rhetoric now, or voters will punish them at the ballot box. And that final warning leaves one unavoidable conclusion: this fight isn't over. And the next clash could decide the direction of the country.
I worry that people will not want to get involved in political conversations in political office because, frankly, they've got to worry about themselves. They got to worry about their families, people they care about.
They do. It's a calculation that everyone makes when they step forward to serve the public. Not unlike those who serve our country in uniform, on first responders and those who serve in the military. I mean, it takes a certain element of courage. But I want to tell you that I do believe that we can turn this back. This will not be an increasing trend. And if leaders on both sides of the aisle will speak clearly about this, I think we can turn it around. I really do.
Charlie Kirk's legacy now lives in the voices refusing to be silenced. And Speaker Johnson's stand proves the fight for truth is far from over. In moments like this, silence is surrender. and every voice matters more than ever. This is the moment where ordinary people decide whether history bends toward courage or collapses under fear. If you believe America deserves leaders who speak with courage, add your voice now. Hit subscribe, drop a comment, and let the world know you will not back down.